First of all, just to introduce myself. So I'm Dragon here, and with Venus we're both running this operation in SL, and have been doing classes every Friday evening fairly regularly, and we're starting to see some of you quite often now, which is great. And this week we had a little thought about what are we going to talk about and do, and I thought I should do something I'm kind of fairly familiar with. This means there's less preparation for me, and I'm quite comfortable with this topic. So I'm going to start shortly, but let me just introduce a few people here who are also here for the first time. I've got here Wig Monkey here on my left hand side, who's joining us. So welcome to the circle. And also we've got a few of our students here from the Central Michigan University who are here doing some field research, and it's quite great to have students with us to find out what we're up to, and we welcome you to integrate with what we're doing. Feel free to ask questions about this method, means of communication and teaching. You guys are seeing it in your classes too, but I think hopefully you'll learn a lot about this process, and feel free to again ask questions to us. So my topic today, the sort of general agenda for us is I will start with just doing the topic. We'll have a discussion also as well, and then after that Venus has prepared a meditation, a Zen meditation, which will follow. So this topic about astrology and consciousness, why have I chosen it this particular way? Firstly, my own view of the subject is, having spent some time looking at both the tropical system initially, which is the traditional Western format, and then the Eastern system, which I'm more familiar with, is to really kind of create a fairly unified view of both the systems. And actually, some of the authors or scholars in the subject talk about the fact there's a point in time in the past where the systems were actually quite aligned and were the same kind of mathematically similar. So what's changed over time for approximately the last 1,000 years is something called the precession. And this is quite a complex concept, but what it effectively means is that there's also an orbit of our galaxy around the Milky Way, and that orbit creates a type of adjustment in the degrees of which the signs fall. So if, for example, in the Western system you have a particular setup, you say you're Leo, and then you speak to a Vedic astrologer, they might say to you, oh no, you're not Leo, you are Cancer. And that's something that can happen, and then you'll be like, whoa, what's this all about? And suddenly your entire self-orientation and identity becomes questioned. So we can take these things quite personally sometimes, especially if you find out you're a sign you don't want to be, right? So what we need to do is just firstly understand the Vedic system in its context, and respect the tropical system also in its respective context. And they're both fields of subjective study. They're not objective sciences. Divination is not, from my point of view, an objective science. It is a subjective, mystical, spiritual science, and that's really the kind of view we have on it if we practice this subject experientially. So much like divination, like tarot, or runes, or I Ching, or Earth Oracle, or even palm reading. It's very much about the state one is in when one is looking at divination, the sort of receptivity we have to the subject, what we are searching for, our sincerity, and the kind of responses we get and how we interpret them. Effectively, all these divination methods are giving some kind of some sort of illumination to our what's going on in our daily life, subconscious mind, the things we aren't necessarily fully aware of. And in doing so, they can give us an opportunity to become conscious and aware of what is happening, and to sort of take a step back from that ongoing kind of like pressures that we come under and the forces that take place. So hopefully at this point in time now you are able to hear me well, and if you're just going to acknowledge that, I will then continue, and I'll start using the screen now. If you bear with me, I'm just going to load some stuff into our screen. Okay. It's all loading in with a bit of luck, and I'll just soon flick on the screen and you'll see it flash up with a type of symbol or chart. Okay, here we go. Welcome back for those of you who've been locked out. Just flicking through the screens, you'll see one coming up in a minute. Okay, let's start with the absolute basics here of how this system works. So hopefully you can see here, just zoom in on my own screen, there is a screen you can see just behind you or where you're sitting, which will just res a bit in a little while. And this shows you the different signs of the zodiac. So some of you might be familiar with these names, right? These words, and would have seen. Would have seen these words before. Anyone familiar with? Have they kind of looked at you like, I am a, they might say I am a Capricorn, or I am a Scorpio, I'm a Libra, or I'm a Virgo, etc. This is normally the traditional tropical view, and that is where we establish, like, often an identity with where our sun is. So if you can maybe shout out the kind of things that you are, be good to hear it. Let's see what the chat is saying here. So you've got Candy's a Scorpio, yeah. Got a Capricorn, great, good. Another Scorpio in there, Teresa. Aries. And as you're going through, if any of you familiar with the Vedic system or sidereal system, or the tropical or the Western system, so I'm familiar with the Vedic system also here. That's has heard of it before or understands much about it. Gemini. That's very detailed. Thank you. Thank you, Wigmonkey. Scorpio again. There's lots of Scorpios today. Yeah, now Joe Naran is saying there's Moon in Pisces. So, okay, let's just sort of see these interpretations and what they all mean, so we get a shared understanding. So, what you can see here is on my screen is just simply, this is the zodiacal chart, which shows you the signs going around the houses. And we sort of see this setup here. This is showing us 12 houses, 12 different boxes. This is what we call the South Indian chart as a method. It's a very easy one to learn from, actually, the one I learned from, and I just found it's very logical and simple to understand. So the way it works is, if you can imagine, overlaid on this, transposed here, is your own planets and where they're positioned. Let's say, for example, someone says they are Leo. They would have the sun in the house of Leo there, which is number 5. If they say the moon is in Pisces, as someone just said now, they would have the moon up there in the Pisces top left corner there, in that box 12. And if they say, for example, another aspect of it is something we call the rising sign, and that is the sign that is on the eastern horizon when you're born and rising upwards. So, for example, I am a Virgo rising. Yeah, so I am, well, the number 6 is I have a rising ascendant of Virgo. Now, these three parts of ourselves, the sun, the moon, and the ascendant, are the kind of first trinity, really, of understanding our just our kind of relative disposition. Sun is our spiritual disposition and where we find our awareness and consciousness, our kind of base principles and values. Underneath all things that don't change from when we are born to the end, and the sun is a planet, the only planet actually which has full strength and continues to go around the sky regardless. It never goes backwards, it always goes in the same direction, and it always sustains its light and brightness without fail. So that sort of shows us something around our own spiritual ability to always have the ability to access that awareness anytime. Then our moon is, moon fluctuates. It is every 28 days taking an orbit, and for say half of the month it is in a slightly darker state. It goes darker and brighter. So the moon, although goes forwards, it does also wax and wane, we call it, and it gets brighter and darker. And so that sort of shows us the mind's own tendency to reflect less light sometimes. When the moon is full, for example, it is only full because the sun is illuminating it fully, just the way that it works astronomically. The sun is actually giving full light to the moon when it's a full moon. So if you imagine at that point in time, we are the most openly aware of the sun's light at that time. And when the moon is dark, as we are now also entering the last few days of a dark moon for this week ahead, there's less light available from the sun, so our minds can be a bit more susceptible to influence, and particularly the darker influences that are out there. Okay, not wishing to be spooky at this point, but so let's just go a little bit further about the kind of the way that we can be influenced by planets, or can we influence them, is another question. So thanks for those kind comments. I'll try my best. Okay, so let's look now at ourselves and how can we be influenced. So I'm going to use a very sort of like I'm going to try as much as I can to try and use yoga or principles of yoga that we all can understand, and we all kind of have a mystical context here. So I hope most of you are familiar with the chakra system, and heard of the chakra system before, the 7 chakras in the body, the subtle body. And this is a fairly traditional approach to understanding astrology within the context of the chakras. So if you can see on the screen in front of us, the same picture. I'm going to just change this in a second, but what you can see is on the right hand side, Leo and Cancer are here together, and they are on the right hand side, these two. The moon rules Cancer, number 4, and the sun rules Leo. Okay, so just can watch that with me. Got the moon ruling Cancer on the right hand side, number 4, and the sun rules Leo. And then above that you have Gemini above this, which is ruled by Mercury as a planet. And every sign has what we call a ruler, the effectively the owner of that house. So if you imagine, for example, that for example, box number 5, Leo, is ruled by the sun. That means that if someone has anything associated to Leo, okay, you can certainly read a bit about the Leo's character, shall we say, from the symbols associated with that house. So, for example, someone says, I am a Leo, right? Then it's ruled by the sun. The number 5 is relevant. And also Leo is known to be a fire sign. And these are things we can look at in more depth. So any one of these signs has certain characters or dimensions to it. I prefer, there's obviously thousands and thousands of books on the subject like this. And the problem with that is that you can get into this thing where you're sort of trying to read and try and cram your head full of stuff, and then get really, really confused because you find all these confusion, contradictions and so on. So my own kind of approach to it really is to try and work with symbols as much as you can do. Work with symbols, and it's a much more sort of like traditional way of doing it, where you'd only maybe be taught just the symbol only, and the symbol alone would give you unlock the meanings of things in a much more intuitive way. So if I can simply just take Leo as an example, which is a lion, and the symbol is an animal, a lion, which is think about how the lion operates. It is a fairly majestic creature. It has a beautiful hair, a mane, like that. It's also in its behavior quite a leading animal, and it likes to be kind of the king of its domain. So it has a leadership kind of natural affinity to lead. It also is a fairly proud animal. It's known for its loyalty and its family kind of like loyalty, and also it's about like passing on things like lineage and how lineage works. So I just you can take any one of these signs and look at the animal symbol behind it and try and that can help unlock this in more detail. So when we're learning the subject, we learn about the symbols, we learn about the signs, and we learn about the various like the ingredients of a chart, and then use that to mix together our interpretation. So let's keep on going with the rulerships. Just one example there that I went off track on. You've got Gemini and Virgo, both ruled by Mercury. Okay, Gemini and Virgo are ruled by Mercury, the planet, and the next ones along are ruled by is Taurus and Libra. Okay, and Taurus and Libra are ruled by Venus. Okay, as a planet, and then we've got Aries and Scorpio, 1 and 8, and they're ruled by Mars. Both of those. You then come to Pisces and Sagittarius, 12 and 9, they're ruled by Jupiter. And then you come to 11 and 10, which is ruled by Saturn, Aquarius and Capricorn. Now it's in a way interesting that if you look at this astronomically also, because it's important to make sure the science maps to science needs to map to what's going on here, because the Vedic system was all based on mathematical principles and things that you could observe by the eye. So they sort of worked out that the kind of way the chart is structured has got to be the same as the sequence of the planets. So if you take like Leo and Cancer, although the moon rules Cancer, but the sun comes first in the center of the solar system. Mercury comes next in the solar system, Gemini and Virgo. Taurus comes next in the solar system. Then between 2, 7, and 1 and 8, between Venus and Mars, is actually Earth. There's actually a line between the two of these. Mars then comes next in the solar system. You then have Jupiter in the solar system, and then you have Saturn in the solar system. And Uranus and Neptune and Pluto were not on this particular method, although I still use them and refer to them just because of the hybrid system that I work with. So okay, let's now look at the chakra body now, how that maps to this. No, that picture's not right. What was that one? I'm going to flick through all the stuff we've got in our packed little chart thing. So here we go. So here we go. This is the way that those signs map to, and the planets map to the chakra body. So there are a few different principles of this, and we also have a bit of information here about what these chakras are about and what they mean. So let me give you why is this important? Okay, why are we even looking at chakras in relationship to this? Is anyone here not familiar with the chakras, first of all, just to sort of make sure that everyone understands what on earth I'm going on about? Just please happily say I haven't got a clue what you're saying, Dragon, and I'll explain to you what the chakra is. You can use voice as well. I don't mind someone hollering back. So if anyone isn't familiar with it, I'll just give a very simple explanation of it. So really what the chakras are effectively in the yoga system are the way that we look at the subtle body. And the subtle body is, although we have a physical form, we have also got a not physical and more astral body, which is something which you can feel but not see. unless you're using some kind of, I don't know, sixth sense. So what it sort of suggests is that there are certain parts of the body that are monitored and sort of like, kept optimum by these chakras being healthy, which are effectively like spinning wheels within us. And with yoga, you work with trying to work with these chakras so that they're in some sort of balance. And so that optimally, ideally, you are in balance and all your chakras are spinning or healthy and working on a kind of very optimum, should we say, frequency. And when that's happening, you are in a very optimum state. And the kind of times when you don't feel so good, you can try to pinpoint the chakras that are, not so optimum. And some of the healing methods like Reiki or pranic healing or other types of lay healing work on this assumption. So, for example, if someone comes in with a throat problem, okay, a throat or a communication or that kind of issue, then you would think, all right, this is something to do with the throat area, okay, and the throat chakra involved with that. And then what you can see here is in this symbol, this diagram, is it just shows you the kind of top to down chakra layout, where you can see the kind of order of them. And so the sort of third throat area would be examined by the condition of Mercury in someone's chart at the time it's been examined. That's how the kind of these sages of old would look at things. They would look at the position of Mercury and if that was, or how that was affected. So each chakra has a planet that rules it, and these planets have their own, should we say, a type of natal strength. So when you're born, initially, you have a certain setup, and these planets are in certain places. And say, for example, you're born with, let's say, Sun is in Leo. It's a simple example. The Sun is in Leo in its own, it's quite strong there. It just means that that particular chakra that's involved with the Sun, which is the crown actually, has got kind of good optimal natural strength. And despite what goes on day to day and through life and the Sun's own movement, you will still feel pretty much good. Sun in Leo, it gives great confidence, for example, and awareness. Or, for example, you are born and you have, for example, a planet which is not doing so strongly, or it's a little bit weaker than we're expected to be, and it's in a weaker position, then that might also give us a natal tendency. For example, Mars in Cancer as a sign is known to be quite very passive for Mars, and sometimes gets the action tangled up with emotion, which makes action quite difficult. Action is better done with knowing confidently rather than through indecision. So if you can sort of imagine there are, say, 7 colours in you, and if the 7 colours are full brightness, then all is good and you're functioning well. But if in this sort of 7 colours there was a few that are slightly dimmer lights, there are the areas where natally we would find it a little bit more challenging, and we'd have to work on those areas a bit more. And as time goes on, like for example now, certain planets are strong and certain planets are weak, and that's the kind of way that connects our chakras up too. So we have a natal tendency, that what we're born with, like what nature gives us, and then there's also the influence of the environment and how that creates a knock-on effect. So just a little slight interactive thing here is just to break up my chat. Just give me a moment, or I'll just come off voice and just come into type for just a few seconds. Hang on. So these currently are what you see are the natural numbers, 1 to 12, and Aries is known to be naturally number 1. Okay, and that's because it is the first sign of the zodiac traditionally, and it finishes at number 12, which is the last sign, which is Pisces. And you go around clockwise. You can just see me counting there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, going around in clockwise motion, because that's the way the planets also move around. So if you imagine that if the Sun is, say, coming in, like the Sun is right now in Pisces, it will move into Aries, and every month the Sun changes one house at a time. Okay, so right now the Sun's in Pisces, it's about whatever it is at the moment. In a month's time or so, it will be in Aries, and it will be very strong actually in Aries. It's the strongest sign the Sun can be in. So if someone is born, for example, with something, like moon in, say, Cancer, like I was born with that, or sun in Pisces, that's one aspect of the chart, okay, and that changes. Like the moon moves every 2.5 days through a sign, the sun every month. But the more unique thing about you is actually where the ascendant is, and that's exactly what is the rising constellation, or at the time of your birth, on the east horizon, which gives you your first characteristic, your first natural, should we say, your kind of character would be the best word to, in terms of translating it. Character is what the rising sign and ascendant is. So me, for example, I'm a Virgo rising, and Virgo rising on the horizon means that the number 6 box actually becomes now number 1 for me. Okay, so the Virgo becomes my number 1, and like everything then changes in relationship to that. So although Virgo is number 1, Libra then becomes number 2 because we're going clockwise. Scorpio is number 3, Sagittarius is 4. Okay, and I keep going around. Capricorn is 5, Aquarius is 6, etc., etc., and I work around the whole box that way. So what we have here is the system of the houses. The first house, where Virgo is, our rising sign, has certain meanings to it and so on. The second house, Libra, has certain meanings in it also. I'm going to show you those in a minute. If you can imagine, if your rising sign was Virgo and you have Moon in Cancer in your 11th house, okay, then you could say that you can interpret that person's 11th house affairs and situations around that 11th house would work in a particular way, influenced by the moon in that particular environment. Okay, so it's actually quite a logical, simple explanation for that. So you look at the planet in the house, you look at what the house means, and you can interpret by that the situation. Okay, so let me show you now how the houses look. So imagine my chart, Virgo is 1 and Libra is 2. What happens? Look at the houses. Okay, let's just browse through this. This screen should come up in a minute. There we go. There we go. Right, so this will slowly load in a minute. Wait till it loads up so you can all see this graphic, hopefully clearly. Okay, how's it looking for you? Is that graphic coming out clearly? Is that resolving now? Hoping you can see it. If you right click it, I think if you right click it and do edit, it should come up as being visible. It's blurring on my screen, by the way, still. I'm going to do a browse next and back, next and then back. I'm going to not see this graphic clearly enough. If so, I want to send it to you. Just holler out if you can't see it. Yeah, sure thing. I'll just ping it to all of you actually. I'm sure I should be able to do this quite quickly. It won't take me a second. So you're going to get this thing called Meanings of the Houses. I'll just send it to you all. I'm really sorry if you get this twice, by the way. I actually don't know what I'm doing. I'm just throwing it in all possible directions. You will get this at some point. Alright, here it comes. And if you got it twice, I'm sorry, you need to work with that. Right. It's blurry on my screen too, actually. I'm going to zoom this out. Oh, struggling with this picture. have to do it from memory, I think. Okay, so I'm going to refer to this graphic here now. Hopefully you've all got that picture from me. Means of the houses. So what I was saying was, the concept here is that these 12 houses, if you imagine like I was Virgo rising, I am this bottom left, bottom right hand side here. So number 6, my first house for me, okay, switches this order you see here. So it's a little bit confusing, but you know, this, what you're seeing here is the natural order, 1, 2, 3, as if someone was an Aries rising person. Okay, that's an Aries rising chart there, and it shows you the order 1, 2, 3, what those houses are. So all we do is we basically switch that slash line in 1, where Aries is, and move it to the actual rising sign we're working with. So say it was me, Virgo, 6. I put my line through that, and that then becomes my self, appearance, body, path through life. And 2, income, wealth, family life. 2, drink, speech, teeth, teaching is a number 2. And I keep on working through that order. 3 then becomes where I have 8. 4 becomes where I see 9 here. So my house, my home, mother, etc. is where it says 9 right now. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you some random questions. Okay. Can someone tell me in this room what sign the number 10 box is right now? What is the sign number 10? What is that sign? Having what you've seen so far, what is the number 10 sign? A little clue actually in the graphic, by the way, if you look at it. Okay, so Jace is Capricorn. Is everyone else okay with that concept and why it's Capricorn? If not, just please ask a question. Yeah, good. Everyone okay with that? Because this is often quite a complex concept and people can get quite confused by it because we're switching things around. So, okay, so that's good. Let me ask another question now. If I was, say, for example, let's say I was Virgo rising, what would be my 11th house sign? What would be the sign of my 11th house? And what is the ruler of the planet of that 11th house, given what I've shown you so far? So imagine I'm Virgo rising, I'm number 6, okay? So number 6 is my rising sign. What is number 11 from me? Okay. And who rules that sign? Which planet rules my sign? So incorrect so far. Ones I've seen, it's not quite right yet. So number 11 I'm looking for. No. This is a bit challenging, I know. This is where we're going to best to ask questions at this point. No, what is my 11th? So far not correct yet. So what is the 11th house for a Virgo rising and what planet is it ruled by? Okay, Jay, you've got that correct now. So, yeah, good. So why is it Cancer Moon? So what am I doing here? So I've asked you, the question was, if I'm Virgo rising, the first thing that happens is, if you look at the photograph, is number 6, okay, as Virgo. It says VI there in the bottom left hand corner. You just sort of, you see that little hidden thing away. Just so you know, there's also a graphic where I'm getting this from. So if you want the image itself, just look in your chat there. There's the image for it. Okay. So if Virgo is the first house, okay, then I transpose everything in relationship to that. So my 11th house becomes, if I go around it's quite difficult with this one. If you go around, let's just count from Virgo going clockwise. Where it says 12, opposite 6 is my 7th house. Okay, therefore the one after that is the 8th. one after that is the 9th, the one after that is the 10th, where it says 3, and the one after that is the 11th, which says 4. Okay, so I count clockwise, including the house I'm in, to get to the house. Okay, so if I'm in, say, house 6, and I'm looking for the 11th house, I will step forward one at a time. Starting from 6, I go around to 11. If I go backwards, another way around, if I go in reverse, say I went from up counterclockwise, I go to house 5, that is my 12th house. Okay, therefore the 11th house must be the one before that. So that's like a shortcut. Okay, so can you see how that all works, everyone? Does that make sense? Is that clearer? It's worth doing an example where we all get it wrong, just to get it right. So let's just see, does that make sense, everyone? Why that would be the 11th house. And just again, shout out if you think there's something wrong there. Still, yeah, counterclockwise is naturally the way we move, but I'm going in the same order the planets would actually orbit. That's the kind of way, the kind of approach this takes. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Maya, if you've got a question. Let's just try to air this, because if we can air it, we can understand it better. Sure, Maya, what's the question you have? Do you want to use voice? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, no problem. That's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of new concepts here. So I mean, you're welcome to ask a question if there's something you think want to just ask randomly, and I'll be happy to explain it in some sort of context. So that's the first question I asked you, was about looking at what sign is in what house. Now what we can do is we can look at someone's actual chart, okay, and just sort of see a bit about them as people, see if we can sort of draw some very simple kind of like understandings of them just based on what we talked about. Now for yourselves, I mean, you all will have your birth time and stuff, and my view of it is that this is like, in a way, like a roadmap for you. I don't look at it as being like something around like your fixed future destiny, because this whole thing about fate and free will was why I brought this up today, was so that you could use this information to understand your present moment. And your present moment, whatever it may be, at any point in time, can, if you're fully aware and all the chakras are harmony and functioning well in unity, then yeah, you have that awareness. But if you find that you're not functioning fully and you're worried or stressed or anxious or not feeling great or happy, unhappy, then there's a way of like looking at things symbolically, and you can look at the symbols and try to unlock a bit about what's going on through natural natal kind of tendencies you might have, what we call it, kind of impressions, subconscious impressions that come up in dreams and stuff. Trying to unlock those sort of subconscious tendencies to sort of see above it all and try and get back into your sun, really, the sun energy, which is the kind of light of awareness of things. So we could look at someone's chart and have a look at it. I've just chosen someone. Yeah, I'm happy to pass around this graphics. I'll share that again, no problem. See if I can get into this board again and add this last picture in, because I need to add one more in to go. Because their cells are functioning a bit weird today. It's not quite doing quite what I want to do. Whereas I'm going to just fling this graphic at you. It'll be a lot easier actually, mucking about with the board. Let me just send this out to you all like I did before. So here comes the chart of Albert Einstein, and this is an accurate chart based on his birth time. He's a fairly famous person. I hope you all have heard of Albert Einstein. Sending you his chart there. Okay, so you're all getting that now. Sorry if you got this twice again, some of you have. Okay, apologies. So here's the chart of Albert Einstein. Now, when we study this subject, what we do is, this will load up for you shortly, is we look at effectively picking those things apart. Like we look at where's the ascendant, we look for that ascendant line, and Jane Ryan did not get one. Let's have a look. Okay, let's try again. Okay, there it is there now. So we look at each sign and what's inside it, and we can sort of see a few characteristics from someone just based on which planets are in which signs. They kind of in a way make that sign activate, also make the houses in that person's life also activate. So given the two, I've got a question for you, which is something I'd like you to do interactively now. Is I've given you two graphics. One is about the main, the meanings of the houses, and one is about the particular Albert Einstein's chart. So my first question to you is to ask you, which houses does Albert Einstein have a lot of activity going on in? Okay, which houses does he have a lot of activity going on in? Secondly, can you infer from this which chakras, okay, this is subtle body stuff, but which chakras or kind of energies are operating from this? Okay, that's a bit of a harder question, but the first question is you should be able to do this, is tell me which houses are operating, is he operating in largely? And then a bit about also what the house means would go with it. So if you have said the number of the house, then maybe also what the house is about. As Jay is answering this question, I mean that's Jay, that is one of the houses. That's good, and I've got here from the Strix also. We've got 8, very good. Okay, yeah, 8, and we have also number 1 that's come up as well, which is good. That's the ascendant. There's nothing actually in 1, the rising sign, but there's something going on there. So I've got here 10 and 8. Certainly, there's planetary activity there. There's also something going on in the other houses too. If we were to say focus on the 10th house, let's give that some attention. Okay, so we can all look at that together. Let's just give 10th, just to give you a simple idea of kind of how this stuff works. So what we learn about is, what does the sun in Pisces mean, and what happens if the sun is also with Mercury and with Saturn and with Venus. There's 4 planets, there's quite a lot of planets in one place. Okay, it's quite unusual. And to have it all going on in Pisces at the same time, you would be questioning, like, what's happening in this person's life. So given that there's 4 planets, there's 4 big planets there, Sun, Mercury, Saturn and Venus, think about the kind of chakras that were involved, that are being connected up also with him, because those planets all rule chakras. They're all in a particular sign, Pisces, which is another layer also. What kind of things could you maybe sort of interpret by seeing that set up? So the 10th house, what is it about? So someone, I mean, Jay's obviously knowing this stuff very well. Let's see if someone else in the class can maybe give can respond to the 10th house. What's actually in the 10th house? What does the 10th house mean? It's great. Strix. Anyone else add to that? So Strix says career. That's 1. That's 1 part. Yeah, we've got career there. Great. Okay, that's one of the many things about the 10th house. We also have the 10th house from the graphic I sent you, that kind of yellow one. Yeah, I've got reputation, how one is seen by the world, and also fame, success, and visible actions. So it's how you're very visible. Now, just so you know, how does the 10th house work? This sign 10. The 10th house is actually over, when you've got the east horizon, which is your ascendant, the 10th house actually is over your head. It's above you, directly above you. So that's kind of like the career is given as a kind of very visible point over your head, the career area. So in this very simple chart, what we can see happening is a few things, and like what we were doing in classes is we would look at those planets in there and look at his life and see kind of the correlation between those particular setups, right? So he has a lot of energy going on in his 10th house. He has his sun there, so you sort of see the soul connection to his career and success. He just happens to be in Pisces, which is a very spiritual, mystical sign. And he also has what we have something called an exalted Venus. And Venus is extremely strong in Pisces, as it is at the moment also. And that tells us a bit about his kind of like view of things, his sort of spiritual orientation on things. And he was a real mystical person, actually. If you read some of his writings, he certainly wasn't making it down to the mundane, if you read some of his more abstract or esoteric texts. So that is, I think, just me wrapping up on looking at one example of a chart and just introducing to you these concepts. It might seem quite initially complicated, but the idea again is always to understand oneself. So if I come back to the kind of fate and free will thing, if you know your own chart setup, you know where the planets are, you then have a kind of, in a way, an advantage in understanding the kind of how you can quickly switch back to your awareness and consciousness. Because the whole aim of this science is so that you go through life unaffected, to be unaffected by, should we say, like influences that are not for your best outcome. So you're able to keep clarity about your pathway and sort of go in that direction and keep kind of like focused. And if difficult things come your way, you always can sort of see, like with looking at times, various timing approaches, a good patch coming, ahead of a bad patch. There's always something to keep moving towards. Yeah. So at this point, I'm just going to just come off voice, okay, and just open up for any questions for a few moments. And then Venus has got something she would like to share with you after that. So feel free to ask any questions, folks. I'm coming off voice now, just by typing, please. Thank you.